policy requirement, is it not?
Yes.
Optimising the quantum of CAS uses, especially office.
Yes.
Thank you. And achieving the spatial strategy ambitions for the site.
Yes.
Right, and I just want to explore that a little bit further with you, Mr. Sturgis. We know, because the London Plan tells us that London has to accommodate significant growth, correct?
Yes.
And the figures are eye-watering. It's 70,000 extra people every year. That's page X11 in the plan, so. But you're aware of that, Mr. Sturgis, aren't you? And the CAS itself has got to accommodate 3.5 million square feet of offices.
Yes.
And the mayor's not saying we're not going to do this. He's saying, having regard to all of the policies, all of the international requirements, etc., we are going to do it. And if there is to be that growth, 3.5 million square feet in the CAS, 70,000 people across London as a whole, directing it specifically to the best places and maximising the use there is going to be important, isn't it?
Yes.
Right. And I just want, from an emissions point of view, net zero and all that, an emissions point of view, to see where this fits in. You want to be putting land uses which involve people and the movement of people in places where they can link trips, correct?
Yes.
Where there are high levels of public transport.
Yes.
Where you've deliberately built, using massive embodied carbon, a new Crossrail and Elizabeth line, for example,
yes,
to maximise the use of that infrastructure. Where you've got agglomerations of other uses, all of that's part of the spatial strategy because it's relevant to emissions.
Yes.
Isn't it? And if growth is to be met, consistent with zero emissions, net zero, let's call it that, because that's the appropriate term, is it not? Net zero. If growth is to be met consistent with net zero, the best way of ensuring that that happens spatially overall, you can't do it site by site. The best way to ensure that that's done spatially overall is to ensure that you have a compact city at the best places in transport and other terms, correct?
Yes.
Good. And carry on.
Well, what I was going to say was that good growth also includes creating a low carbon circular economy in which the greatest possible value is extracted from resources before they become waste.
Yes.
It is not only socially and environmentally responsible, but will save money and limit the likelihood of environmental effects and environmental threats affecting London's future.
I don't disagree with that, and that's why I said right at the outset, don't need to say this in response to every question, having regard to the principles of the circular economy, etc., is part of the requirements for the site. But in spatial terms, all of those movements across the whole of the spatial area, across the whole of the strategic area, associated with 70,000 extra people, 3.5 million extra square feet. I haven't even added in the houses, but directing those to the best, most sustainable positions as identified in the development plan is relevant to emissions as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. And that is a strategically big stick with which to hit emissions, because listen to this, if growth is going to be affected and if growth is going to be accommodated, but you do it in a less focused way, strategically it's bound to result in more emissions, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes.
But if I could also say, if I may, sir, good growth is also said to help London become a more efficient and resilient city.
Yeah.
Those involved in planning and development must A, seek to improve energy efficiency and support the move towards a low carbon circular economy, contributing toward London becoming a zero carbon city by 2050. And I would include in the circular economy retain and retention of buildings.
Well, I hear that you add that, we can discuss that under policy or guidance later if you like, but I don't think you just read from GG6, didn't you?
I did.
Right. There's nothing in GG6 that says that the emissions element of the strategic strategy is anything other than we have agreed.
I can't remember what we agreed, but yes, I'll take it as a.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Good. Thank you. Now, so we've all agreed that they're all requirements of the site: transformation, optimization, achieving spatial strategy and the reasons why, and you're having regard to the principles of the circular economy and carbon, etc. Let's see how you interpreted the requirements of the site in the proof, please. Can you pick up your proof?
Yes.
And can we go to 5.16.1?
Yes.
Thank you. It's at page 15, sir.
I've got it.
And this is where you deal with the decision tree.
Yes.
And where you deal with the decision tree that we've been looking at is the existing building or parts of the building suited to the requirements of the site. You've agreed you've got to look at the buildings and whether they're suited. And then you've got to look at the requirements for the site. Both of those apply. You say a third of the way down, maybe 2/3 of the way down, right-hand side, is the existing building or parts of the building suited to the requirements for the site? The answer again has to be yes, as the existing uses of office retail can clearly be continued with the appropriate comprehensive retrofit approach. See that?
Yes.
That's how you answered this question, isn't it?
Correct.
Right. But that's not really what the requirements for the site are. We've already agreed. Continuing existing contribution is really pants. It's not what we're looking for, is it?
Yes, but I would, as I've said, I would also include requirements for the site as being part of a circular economy.
Yeah. So,
And therefore being, if you like, emphasis being put on reusing them.
I've got you. So,
And,
all,
and what I sort of was going to say is that, as I've tried to demonstrate earlier, that hasn't been conclusively examined.
yeah. But I just want to concentrate on where we are in the decision tree and in the cross-examination. In order to get to a yes there, you didn't have regard to any other requirements of the site other than, can it be done? Can I get to office and retail through a comprehensive retrofit approach? That's what you did.
Yes.
Yes. And you didn't ask yourself the question, what contribution am I making to affecting the transformation of Oxford Street, associated, among other things, with the physical appearance of the buildings or any of that. You didn't ask yourself whether I'm optimizing the quantum of cars, all of which you've agreed are relevant to play into the debate. You've just asked yourself, is there a retrofit here? Answer yes, because I can clearly continue with the appropriate comprehensive existing uses.
Yes.
Yes.
But what I also explained was that by doing the retrofit, you would also improve the public realm, because you would be able to improve the retail frontage around the building. And also you would take steps to improve things like the arcade through and indeed the office entrance.
Well, no, you did that in your rebuttal.
Correct.
Right. This isn't your rebuttal. This is your main proof. This is where you're setting up your understanding of what this decision tree means. And you say, I can pass this. I can pass this because the answer has to be yes, you say, not even a way forward, as the existing uses can clearly be continued with the appropriate comprehensive retrofit approach.
Correct.
Yeah. And that's the width and the compass of what you thought meant by suited to the requirements of the site. Unless I've missed it, you've never at all mentioned in your proof these issues of, do the requirements for the site include transformation, optimization, achieving the spatial strategy? You didn't consider that at all, did you?
I did in the back of my mind. I didn't
Ah.
examine it, but it's inherent in my answer.
Where do I find it
Well,
inherent?
it's
in
not
the
written
answer?
out, but I'm saying in consideration of giving that answer on this page,
Yeah,
I was thinking about all of those issues.
the answer has to be yes, as the existing uses of office and retail can clearly be continued with the appropriate. I mean, I can't see it implied there myself.
No, but if I'm saying uses of office and retail, I'm implying within that the retail frontage would be improved, the office space would be improved, and so on. So
Right.
there is a presumption, and also that the increased retail frontage around the perimeter of the site would be part of that.
I see.
So it's inherent in what I've said, I think.
Okay, well, you had another go at it in your rebuttal at 271. And again, it couldn't be clearer. When you're dealing with this exact same position in the decision tree, 27271, this all explains the GLA were involved in all stages in the consideration of these matters at pre and post application stages. Both authorities were content the demolition had been sufficiently justified, the evidence before them established sufficiently, etc., etc. This is all dealing with box 3. If you look at para 2.5, and you say this, if the requirements, and you misquote, of the site. So
Because if the requirements of the site,
yeah, that's a misquote, isn't it?
is it?
Yes, well, we've got the box as well. And as I explained before lunch, it's very carefully drafted. You see,
Where's the box?
suited to the requirements,
That, yes.
suited to the requirements for the site. So it's not just what the site requires, but it is the requirements placed on the site for other purposes. Do you see the difference? A requirement on the site or for the site might be something specific to the site, whereas the requirement for the site to play a major role in its location is a very different concept. So you've said if the requirements of the site are to provide good quality office and retail use, then as shown below, this can certainly be achieved. Nothing again about the wider requirements for the site.
Well, I would
Is that implicit as well?
say that was implicit. I think that may be just poor use of English on my part, but
All right. But I feel a lot more confident with that answer if anywhere in your proof you've set out what the other requirements for the site are, but you don't. Not in your proof, which runs to 57 pages, or in your rebuttal. I don't find anything about transformation of Oxford Street, the need to optimise, the spatial strategy. D3 is quoted, but only the part dealing with circular economy.
no, because what I was looking at in specific terms, so was the ability of these buildings to be refurbished, because a fundamental part of the M&S case is that these buildings are beyond rescue, and as I've said repeatedly, I don't believe that to be the case, and that was really the point I was examining.
I'd rather thought that was the answer. We've agreed, haven't we, that refurbishment isn't a benefit if it's not viable. We've also agreed that refurbishment, in order to be suitable, has to be judged against the context of the requirements for the site. Otherwise, what's the point of the box?
Correct.
Yeah. In relation to the first, the only evidence on viability and deliverability from any expert or market signal source is that which we provided. And in relation to refurbishment in the context of the requirements of the site, read as a whole, you considered absolutely nothing other than the carbon requirements. Have you? You haven't considered the other requirements for the site?
No, because I was for the reasons I've already given.
So how can you say then that you?
Sorry, there was an answer there. Did you want to say something else?
Well, my point was that what I was particularly addressing was the fact that, firstly, that the Marks and Spencer team, Pilbara 16 options, as I've said already, did not cover the kind of optimization of the existing buildings as an idea. And also that they've gone straight, as they've said, in 2018 to a demolition solution, and that all their subsequent discussions with the Lisbon City Council and so on and GLA were on that assumption.
I have that one. Thank you. Mr. Harris.
Yes, thank you. I have that point as well. I don't think I need to put the point I put last time, to which I got an answer. So again, unless you're unclear about it. No, very clear. Thank you. All right. So that's where we've reached. Good. Thank you very much for that. Can leave that. Role of the GLA and WCC in this case. First, the position of the GLA. There's a whole raft of SI policies which give the GLA a specific and bespoke place in the consideration of whole life carbon and circular economy statements and energy and waste. Yes?
Yes.
Right. And we should explain to the inspector, shouldn't we, what that is. It's a role to get involved in the earlier stages in terms of pre-app, to require information throughout the process, and to continue with an iteration of that and a back checking of that, and in certain circumstances, a recalibration, recalculation post grant of planning permission. Yes?
Yes.
That's unique, I think, where you've got this GLA role, which starts when ideas are nascent almost, to well after occupation. Yes?
Yes.
And that's important because that role is meant to be a holistic one, where there's a consistency of approach, and where if under calculations or over calculations, they can be remedied ex post facto. Yes.
Correct.
Yeah. And that all goes for the calculation of a carbon offset payment, for example. It goes to a consideration of what happens on site long after the developer's gone in terms of BC and various of those things. Yes?
Correct.
Right. And Mr. Sturgis, in that respect, the GLA is at the forefront of UK net zero authorities, is it not?
In terms of policy, yes.
Yes.
And guidance.
Yes. Good. Thank you very much. And in fact, in many ways, it goes further than government policy.
Yes.
Yes. Pick up tab 4, please.
Well, sorry, could I just caveat
We
that?
got your answer. Please caveat.
Yeah, so it goes further in terms of detail, but it doesn't necessarily go further in terms of overall principle of achieving net zero by the certain dates that I've explained to you.
All right. Well, it's the development plan that we've got. So I'm going to stick with it. And I heard your answer. It goes further in some respects. I want to explore what one of those respects is. So we go to tab 4, please.
Tab 4.
Oh, so tab 4 of Mr. Sturgis's brief. Sorry.
Is that section 4 or appendix?
Appendix 4. I put it in tabs.
Thanks.
Yeah. We should put this entire document in with respect, because my learned friend went to 1 or 2 quotes that aren't in evidence yet in his opening.
So, sorry,
And this is enough for me. No.
Sorry, I'm confused.
So what we need to
Major
do,
quotes in.
so we've got a document which is called Building to Net Zero.
Right.
It's in,
Is it a core document?
no, it's one of your appendices, tab 4. Appendix 4.
Are you saying it's not there in full?
It's not, no, it's just, it's actually very short extracts, in fact. And ordinary, I wouldn't mind, except my learned friend went to a couple of paragraphs from it.
Oh,
And I just reminded myself that we ought to put the whole document in on that basis.
We wouldn't have any objection to that, so I'm grateful.
The appendices are a separate document.
It's page 100 and, sorry, page 35 electronically.
So I'm just trying to find this. Is there,
It's the House of Commons Environmental Audit Committee,
Okay,
Building
well-
to Net Zero.
Appendices to your proof. So, do you want a CD number?
if there's a CD number, that would be helpful.
9 and 11.
Ah, sorry, I thought you have it. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Okay. And just so that the inspector knows what status it is, if you like, it's not a government document. It's a select committee document that expresses the views of the members of the Environmental Audit Committee, correct?
Correct.
And in fact, in a number of ways, it's critical of government policy on environment. Advocates changes, for example.
Correct.
Right. It's not a planning document, and it's not governmental, so it needs to be properly understood on its way that you give it, etc. But can we go to page 57 internal, 48 at the bottom?
Of the document.
Yes. 57 internal, 48 on the appendices. Who there, sir?
So what page number? Sorry,
It's electronic page 49.
I'm grateful.
Thank you.
That's it.
and it's actual page number.
57.
57.
It's in the top right.
I was hoping we'd do this really quickly. Never mind.
We all live in home.
Yep, got it.
Good. And this is your document. I'm assuming you've read it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what it says is further ways for the government to incentivise retrofit. Yes.
Yep.
And what it says is this is their steer. They say this is the government should do this, requiring circular economy statements as part of planning applications.
Yes.
Yes. And this is why we see we're in front of the rest of the UK on this. This is already a requirement of the GLA's London plan.
Yes.
It says for existing buildings on site, this involves a decision tree type analysis. We know that's guidance as opposed to policy, don't we? With exploration of adaptation and reuse of the existing building, partial building reuse, where this is not possible, deconstruction and component material reuse where A and B are not appropriate.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the decision tree we just looked at, isn't it?
Possibly, but not necessarily.
No, it is necessary because I've checked the reference 298.
Apologies, you're right.
Dr. Daniel Densley Dingley.
correct.
The only thing he gets wrong is
Yes, correct.
where it says are not appropriate, it should say do not meet the requirements for the site. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah. So the GLA is right up there. It's doing stuff that the committee thought needed to be done already, isn't it?
Correct.
And it's staffed, is it not, by very experienced and expert officers.
Yes.
Yes. Good. And let's look at the role of the GLA and WCC in this case very, very briefly. It's the last thing we do, I think. We know that all the way through 2019, 2020, 2021, and indeed post the application in July 2021, there were meetings with one or other or both of the authorities, correct?
Correct.
Right. And we also know that you weren't present at any of those meetings, I don't think.
No.
No. We also know that the application was made in July 2021.
Yes.
We also know that there was a suite of GLA guidance notes issued in March 2022.
Yes.
Very much. They were in draft previously, but very much of the text of the circular economy statements and the whole life carbon changed between the draft and the final.
Correct.
And there was significantly new material relating in both sets of guidance as to what was appropriate to do at pre-app stage. Yes,
Correct.
but by that stage the application was in, and we'd had a whole bunch of pre-apps with both local authorities.
Yes, but the decision, as we've heard, the decision to demolish the building was had in 2018.
Right.
Which is what Mr. Pilbrow said.
Well, no, what he said was that they looked at lots of other options. The whole thing was considered by the GLA through the process, and it's that I want to take you to now, because we've not gone to them all. So can we please look to this GLA stage 1, which is CD 402. Is this a document you've seen before? Leave it there, sir. CD 402.
This is the,
GLA stage 1.
yes,
Now, unless there's good reason otherwise, it's fair and appropriate, isn't it, to work on the basis that the GLA should be, and the GLA's officers should be taken to understand and apply its own policies and guidance, draft or otherwise.
yes,
Yes, that's what I thought. In the summary here of the GLA's analysis, they say this: strategic issues. So,
which paragraph are we looking at?
we're looking at strategic issues summary, not a numbered paragraph. It's in the box on the front page after the letter.
Apologies, yeah.
The office-led redevelopment of the site is strongly supported in accordance with SD 456 D8 and good growth objective GG2 paragraphs 13 to 17. See that?
Yes,
Then dealing with the issues that you're rather concerned about, where you say let everybody down. Can we look please at paragraphs 48 and 49?
of
The same document.
same document.
We could also deal with energy strategy if you like. Now, by the stage of this stage 1, the London plan had been published, had it not?
Correct.
We're in October 2021. All of the stuff that you say changed the world, we fundamentally disagree with that, by the way. So all the things that you say changed the world are in place, October 21. What we've got in 48 is this. Policy SI2 makes clear that the development proposals referable to the Mayor should calculate whole life carbon emissions through a nationally recognised whole life carbon assessment. We've seen that with other witnesses. Demonstrate actions taken to reduce life cycle carbon emissions. The applicant has provided a WLC report only and appears to have undertaken a complete WLC assessment for the development. However, an Excel version of the WLC template is required for a full review to be completed. See that? Now, can we explain to the inspector that the whole life carbon analysis takes place on an Excel version spreadsheet, doesn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. It is a spreadsheet that exists to ensure consistency and transparency. And what you need to do is fill it in to the satisfaction of the GLA. There aren't any requirements beyond that. That's now how it works.
Correct.
Yes. This can be found here. Help us. All right.
Yep.
So up until then, we'd provide them with a WLC assessment. They're saying, well, we need to review all this. You need to fill in the, like everybody else, please, fill in the template. Yeah. Circular economy. In accordance with policy SI7 of the London Plan, the circular economy statement has been submitted with the application, which is welcomed. We also bear in mind that by this stage, there'd been 3 years of pre-apps. Yes?
Yes.
And those pre-apps we know, among other things, go to the principle of redevelopment or not.
Yes.
However, additional material relating to the strategic approach, operational waste, bill of materials, recycling and waste reporting and plans for implementation is required.
Yes.
The strategic approach is the approach to whether you retrofill or not, isn't it?
Correct.
Yeah. But of course, in asking for this, you don't forget the X years that have gone by where you've been in pre-apps. Do you?
Correct.
No, that's what I thought. A commitment to post-completion reporting secured by planning conditions also required. Full details of the outstanding issues associated with the circular economy strategy being sent directly to the applicant and the council. Yeah, so this is not, we haven't got everything here. It's been sent to us. It's been done offline. Okay, that's CD.
Can I add something?
Yeah,
in
yeah,
to
please,
that,
yeah.
please? So I think one of the issues here with policy SI 2 is at this point, as described, it is only asking for information. And it is asking you to fill up the Excel spreadsheet as Mr. Harris has described. But what it is not doing, it's not providing any targets. And I think that will come, but I suspect that's why it is of interest to the Secretary of State, is because it's a question of how you see the performance of this site, for example, or indeed any site, in relation to the overall trajectory to net zero.
Right, okay. I'm going to pick up your point about the Secretary of State because you've said it on 3 occasions now that you think this has been called in because of this issue.
Well, it's been called, one of the reasons given, I think, was to connection with the sustainability policy.
Nope. The call-in has been identified. We've got the call-in letter, should you want to see it. Call-in has been identified as being the subject of call-in. There is a requirement in the inquiry procedure rules for the Secretary of State to identify those matters he wishes specifically to be informed on. In this case, he specifically wished to be informed upon heritage issues. And then he said, and any other issue the inspector thinks is appropriate. So yes, it can't be, can it, that this case has been called in for this reason? What is your evidence in support of that proposition?
Well, the inspector in his...
That's different. Now, once there's a Rule 6 party, and the Rule 6 party raises the issue, the inspector has to sit down and say, what are the main issues? So he looks at the Rule 6 party's evidence, and unless they are frivolous, we'll say, clearly I need to hear about this.
No doubt, when the inspector makes his report,
Yes,
the Secretary of State will decide whether he listens to the net.
I agree, but there's a point prior to that, logically and chronologically, that you've asserted at least on 3 occasions now, which is the Secretary of State has called this in because of this carbon issue. Where's your evidence?
I don't mean exclusively.
Where's your evidence that he considered it at all?
Well, I was obviously confusing it with the inspectors.
So do you want to just reflect on and
I think he's answered that.
you got the point. Right, okay, thank you very much. Okay, so there's stage 1, and we've looked at that and what was requested. Stage 2. Can we go to, please, paragraphs 30 and 31?
In the same document.
No, this is stage 2, CD 412.
CD 412. Yep.
This is, yes, GLA. Let's look at paragraph 8. Somebody was objecting on the basis that it doesn't make sense to demolish this very high quality 100-year-old Edwardian building in an Art Deco style. That's the nature of the, all of your own view on the accuracy of that, but there's the nature of the objection. Then 30, as requested at the initial consultation stage, the applicant has submitted an Excel version of the whole life cycle template. Now, just to deal with what you said a few moments ago, that is it, isn't it? When it comes to whole life cycle, that template is what you fill in.
Correct.
Yeah. To support the WLC report submitted at stage 1.
Mr. Harris, can I just interrupt for a minute? There's an inconsistency between these 2 GLA documents as to what WLC is an abbreviation for.
Yeah.
We've got whole life carbon, we've got whole life cycle carbon, and here we've got whole life cycle.
I can explain that, sir.
That might be very helpful.
Life cycle has got a dash.
Yeah,
So-
but this just says whole life cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas the previous one said whole life cycle carbon, did it not?
Yeah, it did. So
And I've also
WLC,
seen whole life carbon,
I think the
and I'd
consistent,
like to get it right.
that's correct.
It is whole life cycle carbon.
It is whole life dash cycle carbon, which gets you to
Yeah.
AWLC.
Well, that, I think that's how I've used it.
It
But
is.
seeing it in different formats is.
I think it's fair to say that different people use different combinations of those words.
Well, self-evidently. I'd like to use the right one in my report. Thank you very much.
I'm grateful, sir. So as requested at the initial consultation stage, the applicant submitted an Excel version to support the WLC report submitted stage one. Submitted assessment satisfactorily addresses London Plan Policy S12F and is acceptable. That's there. You may take a different view, but
I
as
think that's correct.
good, thank you. What is correct that you take a different view?
No,
No.
no, it's correct that they submitted as you described.
Yeah, and that it satisfies the plan and is acceptable. The requisite post-construction monitoring.
Sorry, could I just add something to that?
Yeah.
So, as I said earlier, I think at this point in time, all the GLA are doing is confirming that they've received the document that has been correctly and sensibly filled out. What they're not doing is making a value judgment because there are no targets at this point.
That's rubbish, with the greatest of respect. The
There aren't
submitted,
any targets.
well, there are targets, as you know.
Well,
Look at the paragraph on its face. Look what it's doing.
paragraph 30.
Yes, it's explaining to the local authority whether it's safe or not to grant planning permission. They're not just saying, oh, we received a document. They're saying, we asked for a document,
Yeah.
we received the document.
And it's acceptable.
No, the submitted assessment satisfactorily addresses London Plan Policy S12F. S12F, as my learned friend spent ages trying to persuade Mr. Goddard, is not just a post box. They are saying they received the document and it's acceptable. The requisite post-construction monitoring, that's the stuff that happens after the development has got permission,
Correct.
is included in the list of planning conditions to be attached to the planning permission. And what happens is that spreadsheet, which they've accepted, is monitored, updated, revisited, recalibrated, recalculated all the way through, is it not? And when you say there are no targets contained in the whole life cycle assessment, you're just plain wrong, aren't you? Because Appendix 2 contains whole life cycle benchmarks and aspirational benchmarks, doesn't it?
That's not a target. That's a benchmark.
Well, an aspirational benchmark isn't a target.
No.
All right.
It is, what it's intended to do is give guidance to what a good answer would be.
Yes.
But it is not saying this is a legally required target.
Yes. Okay. I understand how you say it now. But the guidance is as it is. The policy is as it is. And the guidance contains benchmarks of what ought to be acceptable and aspirational benchmarks of what are more than acceptable.
Correct.
Yes. Are you familiar with the table, sir? It's,
No, I'm not.
well, I should just show it to you. It's
Please do.
CD 632. And it's page 34. And forgive me if I was wrong in saying they were targets. What they are is benchmarks.
Correct.
And the idea is you try and get as close to the benchmark as you can. And with a fair wind, you get close to the aspirational benchmark.
I explained something for the inspector that this is the first iteration of this document. And consequently, the industry needs to get used to the idea of using it, which is why benchmarks were deemed more appropriate than targets.
Yeah.
And the benchmarks were to try and give guidance, but also to gather information. The aim being that by gathering information, and I think there's about 150 referable schemes to the GLA per year, that by gathering information, all of this can be improved.
But this is where we are at the minute.
Correct.
And in terms of our scheme, we exceed the benchmarks and get close to the aspirational. Good. I think it's good, yeah. Are you happy with that? So I'm going to move off that now.
Quickly scanning what it is. Yeah. Okay.
So it's,
I've made a note.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And then regarding circular economy, 31, additional information relating to the strategic approach, operational waste, bill of materials, recycling and waste reporting and plans for implementation was requested at stage 1. The information as requested has been provided. See that?
Yes.
And we also know, in addition to that, that we had all of these pre-apps where these issues were being considered.
Correct, but as I say, what I understand in timing terms that the decision to demolish was made in 2018.
Yeah.
Before these three.
But you don't forget all of that analysis. And now we're in March 2022.
Correct.
Mr. Sturgis.
Yes.
So here we are, a formal document going back to Westminster, explaining the strategic approach, operational waste, bill of materials, recycling, etc., was requested and has been provided.
Yes.
Not that it's inadequate, it has been provided.
Yes.
And of course, must be read in the context of, by this stage, the 19 pre-apps that have taken place. The information as requested has been provided. In addition, a commitment to post-completion reporting is included. The application therefore accords with Plan Policy S17. That's a judgment, isn't it?
Yes.
By these expert GLA officers who are responsible for the onward consideration of this case were to get planning permission as well.
If I could add something there, sir, I don't dispute at all comment that the GLA has experts looking at this, but what I would say is that they're still, if you like, discovering what this all means and how it all works, because these are brand new policies, as has been pointed out by Mr. Harris, and they are still, if you like, becoming part of the way they do things.
Yeah.
So there is a learning curve for the GLA as much as everybody else.
All right, is there anybody better?
No.
No. You prefer requirements, but we've not got requirements.
I'm not saying that anybody better. I'm saying that it's a function of time
Yeah,
and various other things. So that there's a learning process.
well, I'm sure that's right in all things. Then we had an addendum, didn't we? And the stage 2 addendum considered the final versions of these drafts, didn't it? Yeah. And it also considered at the same time a paper that you wrote.
Yes.
I'm holding it up, so it's CD 417. It runs to a significant number of pages and makes the sorts of points that you're making at this inquiry.
Correct.
Yeah. And stage 2 addendum went before the mayor.
Correct.
Legal advice taken, Douglas Edwards QC. We've got the whole report before us. We've looked at it on several occasions. It includes a long section from paragraph 6 through to paragraph 12 dealing with your report.
Correct.
Notwithstanding that, it concludes that the strategic issues raised at consultation stage with respect to land use principles, skills and opportunities for all urban design, transport and sustainable development and the environment have been addressed. The matter set out in the committee report and the council's draft decision, considering the material planning considerations of strategic importance, the mayor finds the application having regard to the development plan as a whole is acceptable in strategic planning terms.
That's what they say.
It also says, in terms, that having regard to what you say, they are satisfied that sufficient justification for the demolition has been given.
That's what they say.
All right, very much like that. Thank you, sir. That's all I need to ask.
Thank you.
Mr. Fraser. Thank you. So yes, just a few questions. I'm going to start by picking up on a point made by my learned friend about evidence that a comprehensive retrofit scheme is viable and deliverable. This question is such a scheme viable and deliverable? And to do that, can I ask you to take up CD 6.32, which is the whole life carbon. Sorry, I've done it now. Whole life cycle carbon.
The one we were
guidance.
just taking.
one day somebody will be.
Exactly, the one that you co-wrote. It's 6.32,
Yeah.
we were just looking at. And I want to ask you about page 26. Get that up.
Electronic 29.
Electronic 29, yes.
26, yeah.
And this is in the box 4,
Yep.
planning application submission stage information requirements. And point 5, confirmation that options for retaining existing buildings and structures have been fully explored before considering substantial demolition. So 2 questions arising from that. To what extent, in your view, does the need to fully explore options for retaining existing buildings include the need to consider viability and deliverability?
Well, it's not phrased here that viability and, is part of it, but I think the fully exploring is, we would assume that that would be part of it.
And who is responsible for fully exploring? Is it the applicant or is it someone else?
Whereas the applicant,
Thank you. That's the first point on re-examination. Secondly, the Knight Frank evidence, you were asked some questions about this. This is CD 10.4, which is the appendices to Mr. Goddard's evidence.
10.4 as opposed to 10.04, yeah.
I think they're the same. And if they're different, then I'm very worried.
Or 10
Because I've missed an entire suite of 4 documents. CD 10.4. Appendices to Chris Goddard, and you and I are both working from electronic versions, as is the inspector, and the page I'm interested in is page 197.
Before.
There we were before, exactly. So helps. Let me know if I don't miss a
That's what I've got. Scroll through more.
Is it page 32 internal?
It is indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
Paragraph 9.3.
Right on there.
So this is where Knight Frank say that they've assessed 3 scenarios: existing, refurbishment with change of use, and application scheme. And you recall that you were asked some questions by my learned friend about the consideration by Knight Frank of refurbishment alternatives. Can we just look now at page 209 of this document, which is where Knight Frank set out their consideration of the. Well, let's start with 209.
Yep.
Paragraph 10.33, refurbishment with
Yeah.
change of use. They say we've looked at the scenario of refurbishment with change of use and judged its merit for an office occupier based on a detailed technical review, qualitative criteria, and space planning opportunities. And they say it doesn't go to meet the targets, even with the change of use and so on. In 10.34, we then get that technical review.
Well, is it fair to miss out the rest of that paragraph?
I'm very happy to read the rest of it out.
This analysis is apt.
This analysis is apt to capture the significant constraints of any reasonable refurbishment for the 3 buildings. So they say there that they've considered any reasonable refurbishment of the 3 buildings. Let's have a look what they say in their technical review at 10.34. Do you have that? It's over the
Yes, I
next
do.
page, 210. And here they've got a number of different criteria, key criteria, floor to ceiling height. And then they have refurbishment with change of use in the final column, 2.37 to 2.9 meters.
Yeah.
And you can see the traffic light system that they've got. Structural and planning grids at 4, various structural grids due to different buildings merged together, irregular or non-existent planning grid. There's then consideration of lift performance, operational efficiency with the loading bay on the ground.